Hey there, EB here on the Anything But Bland weekly recap. Welcome everybody. It's Thursday. Sorry I'm a couple minutes late. Got lost track of time this morning. So much to go over this week. I'm going to be ranting a little bit. I'm going to try to make some rational sense of what's taking place. As Joan Rivers said, can we talk? Okay, it's time to talk. We're in the last stretch, the home stretch of the electoral season before we have the November 5th election. Not only the presidential election, but the House of Representatives could flip from Republican to Democrat. The Senate could flip from Democrat to Republican. I think the House race is going to come down to probably 3 or 4 races in New York State, where the 2022 election, good morning, Benita Maharana, the New York State elections, those in 2022 were decided by like 1 percentage point or less. Mike Lawler's seat. So there's a couple different seats there, and I think that we could have a very competitive House race this season. So everybody's talking about, wow, we have so much fatigue from the election, the presidential election, and admittedly, I have fatigue from it. But we are not near the finish line. I was talking to my brother this morning, and I think we're near the starting line. And the starting line is going to be November 6th, because no matter who wins the presidency, whether it's Kamala or it's Donald Trump, I think the America is going to see civil unrest of the likes that we have not seen since the Vietnam War, consistent civil unrest. I think with depending on who wins, I think the other party is going to take their disappointment, their objections to the results, the objections to how votes were counted, who made decisions regarding certain ballots. All of that is going to come into play. I think we're going to have a lot of challenges in court. I ultimately think we're going to have a Supreme Court type of challenge like we had in Bush v. Gore. Now, I do believe that Kamala will, after probably a week or two of legal fights, if she loses, will concede that she lost the election or that the election's over. I think that there will be a smooth transition of power between the Democrat Biden as well as Kamala to the new Trump administration. I am not confident if Trump loses that there will be peace. And I say that because I think Trump is concerned of the continued prosecutions and the potential jail sentences that could be coming for not only the convictions that he had, but the document case that will be revived after the 11th Circuit reverses the decision that was made by the district court judge in Fort Pierce, Florida. I think he's in trouble in the D.C. case and Tanya Junkin, but I do think the Atlanta case, I think that Fannie Willis should be and will be disqualified from prosecuting that case. But I say that because Trump is fearful of going to prison. So Kamala's been asked this week, would she pardon Trump? We do recall that Ford pardoned Nixon after Watergate, and I think it was the right thing to do to let the country heal. But it killed Ford's presidency. It virtually eliminated him from really winning in 1976 against Jimmy Carter. He had a year and a half in power, and he was considered not a serious president, even though he was very smart. He's a Michigan guy. He was, portrayed as a bumbling idiot. Chevy Chase played him on Saturday Night Live, and so the pardon hurt him historically. I do not believe that Kamala will pardon him, but I believe if she wins, that it's possible that Joe Biden, as his last act, may pardon Trump to see if the country can heal. there are certain consequences for attacking our democracy, which I do believe Donald Trump has done consistently since 2020 when he lost the election. And there should be consequences. I definitely do not agree with the convictions that have been to date. I don't agree with how they use the election laws to convict him on the Stormy Daniels matter. I think that the New York State went too far with the $360 million verdict. I do think the serious cases are the classified documents case, and I do think the serious case is the one in D.C. on the disruption of the election on January 6th, but they have yet to be heard. But we need to protect our country. We need to protect each other. We need to make sure that when people, regardless of who wins or loses, start to say we should, fight or we should get in the street and do violent protests, we need to stop that. We need to tell people that's not how we're going to be. I think that we're on the precipice of losing a lot of our civility, and that's what I'm talking about, is civility, the ability to respect each other. We no longer talk to people, we talk over people. The truth is always muted into shaping whatever we want to shape to try to prove a point. So I'm going to talk at length about Trump and Kamala as we go on during this recap, but I want to start with Charelle Golden was one of the October 7th hostages. She was a beautiful young woman that was at the Nova Music Festival in Israel. She was taken hostage. She was raped. She was injured. She was brutally raped over and over again. And she was free. She was freed. And then she was bullied on the internet. Her story was questioned, whether she indeed was sexually assaulted, and they mocked her. Well, she ended up committing suicide this week, and I think we all should pause because I think it's a disgrace, and I'm saying that as kindly as I can. I think it's a disgrace for anyone to question people who were taking hostage. I say that because I still am livid that Donald Trump has said that John McCain is not a hero, that he was captured, that George Herbert Walker Bush was shot down at World War II, and he's not a hero because he was shot down. Let me tell you something. Anybody that puts their life on the line for their country, especially John McCain at the Vietnam War, who could have gotten out after 3 weeks of being a prisoner because his father was a rear admiral. And he said, no, I'm not coming out until my men come with me. And he stayed in there in the Hanoi prisons, in the jungles, for 6.5 years. And there's a man who didn't serve, who went to a podiatrist in the Bronx who was friends with his father to get a deferment because of bone spurs, who never put his life on the line for his country. Don't talk about, well, he was shot at. That's not putting your life on the line, okay? Life on the line is grabbing a weapon and fighting for freedom, fighting for the cause of democracy in America. And to criticize soldiers, to constantly belittle soldiers, to call John Kelly a lowlife and a scum, a 4-star Marine generals. My associate, Scott Mangillo, is a Marine, is been pro-Trump for 5 years. When he heard him, Semper Fi, when he heard him demean John Kelly, that was it for him. Where are the Marines standing up? John Kelly's not a liar. He's not a politician. He took an oath. He's come out and made some statements about Trump, and we'll get into them, about using Hitler as a basis to say that he had some really good ideas and he had great generals. Hitler's generals? They're Rommel's. Trump didn't even know who Rommel's was. They tried to kill Hitler, but they also were barbarians. We need to stop this. We need to open our eyes. A woman was taken hostage by the barbaric Hamas terrorists, raped, held in a tunnel for months on end, and then we mock her and we act like she didn't go through hell. It's a disgrace. We also should not overlook what's still happening in Ukraine. North Korea and Russia are making an alliance that North Korea has sent 10,000 troops to Russia to train militarily. Why? Because North Korea's never really fought a war. Their army's paper tigers. They've never fought. They don't know. And Russia is now going to use these North Korean soldiers to fight the Ukrainian war. And that is a real problem. When China, when Russia, and North Korea start to form an axis of cooperation, that is a real problem for the rest of the world. Let's look at what's happened to Rudy Giuliani this week. I mean, it is an epic fall. What it shows is the law catches up with you. Rudy Giuliani, after the 2020 election, went out on TV and, talked about all this proposed, purported, alleged election fraud, which was not true. But he trashed two women who were African-American election workers in Atlanta, Georgia. And they ended up getting a $150 million defamation verdict against him. He filed for bankruptcy. He was thrown out. And this week, he's losing his $6 million New York penthouse. He's losing a 1980 Mercedes. He's losing a Joe DiMaggio jersey and possibly 4 World Series rings. And here's the irony. Trump owes him $2 million in legal fees. Rudy wasn't paid anything for what he did for Trump after the 2020 election. And it's got him criminally charged in Arizona, this civil verdict. And what we see is all these different people who have been in Trump's orbit have ended up in prison. Let's not overlook that. And found guilty. Michael Flynn, remember him? He was the director of national security, a 4-star general. Rudy Giuliani, former American's mayor. Steve Bannon is just finishing up his 4-month sentence in federal prison for disregarding a subpoena by Congress for the January 6th committee. Navarro, he served 4 months for disregarding a subpoena that was issued by January 6th. Paul Manafort, who was his campaign manager for the 2016 election, he went to prison. Papadopoulos, who worked in his campaign, he went to prison. Roger Stone, who was his dirty front man, he went to prison. Michael Cohen, his fixer, his lawyer, he went to prison. Alan Weisselberg, Trump's CFO, he went to prison. Brody, Gates, Sidney Powell, one of the lawyers who came up with this idea to go with fake electors after January 6th, she's going to end up going to prison. Ellis, Tom Barrack, who was a really personable guy, bald head, who headed up Trump's inauguration committee, he had to plead guilty for stealing money and raising money from the inauguration committee. Steve Bannon is criminally charged for raising money under false pretenses to build the wall, where he used the money that was raised from people and didn't dedicate it to the wall. There was a report this week that so many of the ground contributors of Trump, the $10, the $50, the $100 contributors, are elderly people who have dementia. They showed a man who has given over $70,000 to Trump because their campaign preys on elderly people who don't know right or wrong. This all has to stop. Let me talk about some additional things before I get back to the election that I think is really important. There's certain Democrats that I think should worry about their life going forward, whether it's a Pelosi, whether it's Adam Schiff, whether it's Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Biden's family. Trump keeps talking about enemies within. We don't have enemies within, okay? American citizens that differ and protest aren't enemies, okay? And he's not talking about the illegal immigrants, okay? They can be enemies within. He's talking about people who have different political beliefs than him, or he feels that he's been wronged. Donald Trump talks about an enemies list. Kamala Harris talks about a to-do list. I think that what we're seeing is, whether it's the media, and I think they're complicit, or it's political pundits, they're holding Kamala Harris to an absolute perfection standard. She's got to be perfect. Everything she says has to be right. She has to have a perfect answer for everything. But not holding Donald Trump to that standard. If he says anything about, oh, Hitler's had some good ideas, or I really like his generals, they try to explain it away. Or if he says, I'm going to unleash the military on the enemy within. Oh, what he really meant was the illegal aliens. He didn't mean the political opponents. Even though when they play the video for him, for these people, they say, well, that's not what he really meant. In the Kamala Harris Brett Baer interview that was on Fox News, he had to admit that they showed the wrong video to Kamala when Trump said that he was going to hunt down the enemy within. He wasn't referring to illegal aliens. And even when confronted and said, look, Donald Trump, are you referring to illegal immigrants as opposed to Democratic adversaries? He says, I'm referring to the Democratic adversaries. I will give the guy credit. He doesn't run from what he says. And again, don't tell me it's raining when you're urinating on me. He means what he says. Maya Angelou again says, when somebody says it and shows you who they are, believe it. That's one thing that I do think is true. The former Abercrombie CEO, his name is Jeffries, Abercrombie and Fitch. He and his partner and another middleman were indicted for sex trafficking and fraud. 10 or more models were forced on the proverbial director-producer's couch to have sexual acts with these two reprobates and miscreants. Fine, they want to be have a gay relationship. Have at it, no problem. But when you use your position of power to make people do sexual acts and it's sexual trafficking, it's enough. I'm disgusted with what is going on in our society. And I'm going to talk about P. Diddy in a little bit. But these people in power with these sex-off parties and then forcing other people to commit sex acts against their will because they need a modeling job or they need an acting job. What is going on? I mean, is this Caligula from like Rome? Where is this? Where did we start this debauchery, this way of life? No, I'm not talking about being puritanical. What you want to do in your bedroom is fine, but not in the workplace, okay? Don't force people to do this. Don't rape people. Do not sexually abuse minors, okay? It's not right, it's not lawful, and just because you have money, you will not get away with it. The Martha Stewart documentary and the whole Martha Stewart thing is just fascinating to me. I'm a big fan of Martha Stewart. I think that's a woman that paved her way, that paved it, broke down doors, that paved the way for a lot of women executives and CEOs. Her industry is amazing. She's square with the house. Yes, she had inside trading, but she went to prison. She paid her time. But now we're finding out that she had a lifelong affair on her husband. Um, and but she's still saying if you have a husband that cheats on you, women, get out of the marriage. But she did have a lifelong affair. What was interesting is they have one child together, and when they got divorced in 1991, she has never spoken to the man again. So I found that interesting. Susan Smith, just a fascinating case study in uh, just insanity, in committing the ultimate heinous act in killing her two children and then blaming it on this fictitious African American man that supposedly carjacked her and the kids. She is up for parole. We talked about it a couple weeks ago, but she sold her story a couple weeks ago for some money. She communicated by phone with some either Netflix or some different production company, and gave them names of people that they should talk to about the story, and it has jeopardized her parole. One, I didn't think she should get parole, but now she definitely won't get parole. This is a woman that I believe should spend the rest of her life behind bars for what she did. She obviously shows no remorse. She hasn't changed her behavior. She has had babies in prison. She has had sex with guards. This is a dangerous, dangerous woman. Um, 50 Cent came out 10 years ago and said that P. Diddy is warped. P. Diddy's a sexual abuser. P. Diddy forces himself on young boys and on men. And everybody thought he was crazy. Everybody thought he was jealous of P. Diddy's success. Let's just call him Sean Combs, okay? He's not Puff Daddy, puffs his chest out. He's a nothing. He's a loser, okay? This is a guy that people tried to revere and say, "Oh, you're such a great businessman." No, you're a thug, and you're a criminal, okay? And you're a sexual pervert, a sexual deviant. If there is a world of justice when he's in prison, he better be a pincushion for somebody, because A-listers, you better be scared. They are now naming lawsuits. They're naming A-listers who participated in these sexual rapes, who stood by while young boys were sexually assaulted or had to perform sexual acts. You just heard a new lawsuit came out by Sean Puffy Combs' trainer, who was drugged and then passed around like a doll to men and women, A-listers, some really serious A-listers. And Sonny Daz, thank you. I agree they should be named. They should be outed. Why? They are criminals. You don't stand by when crimes are happening. You don't stand by when there is genocide happening. That's what happened in Germany. That's what's happening in Darfur. So, Pete Diddy just was also came out that he gang raped with other people a 13-year-old girl. Bring it all out. All of these things I think we're going to start seeing. No, whether it's the Illuminati or whatever. No, it's not a special group of people that run the world. It's a special group of dirtbags, scumbags, sexual perverts, people that no longer get a thrill by marrying somebody like I have married Renee, my wife, 37 years. Every time I see her, every time we have sex, it's like the first time. Why? Because I love her, because that's what life is about, okay? It's not about, well, geez, what can we do this week? Can we drug somebody up? Let's start with little boys. How about little girls? Let's drug up adults. Let's make people who are heterosexual, make them perform a homosexual act on me. It's absolutely gone crazy, okay? And I think we're scratching the surface. I think a lot of these big companies, you're going to hear about this. Early on in my career, Ronnie and I had a case against an organization where there were people who were doing things after hours from 8 o'clock at night to 6 o'clock in the morning that would blow your mind. Things that would be happening in the offices themselves. So that's something that we should really be thinking about. The death of the Hamas leader, Yahya Sinwar, continues to just taste like sweet nectar, okay? I think it's so good for the Palestinian people. It's a seminal moment. It's a time when they can make a decision. Do we have self-governance, or are we going to continue to let Hamas rule? I continue to really get concerned for young people that are dying like Liam Payne from One Direction. Mental health is really an important issue that we're going to have to start addressing. I think that we see it happening in different people and we don't do anything about it. So that is something that we should be looking at. The Mets, got to give the Mets credit. They had a dream season. Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, I think that they have nothing to be ashamed about. And I got to tell you, I can't be more excited about a Yankees-Dodgers World Series. Other than the Phillies, I'm a Yankees fan. Guys, we have five of some of the best players in the history of baseball. We have Ohtani, who I think is going to go down as one of the greatest, if not the greatest baseball player of all time, if he can have a long career. We have Mookie Betts, who's a five-tool player, okay? He can run, he can hit for power, he can throw. He's an unbelievable fielder. He looks like he weighs 165 pounds, and the guy hits a long ball. He is as good as it gets. The Yankees, they have Juan Soto. This is going to be the first $700 million man since Ohtani next year. Giancarlo Stanton, who the Yankees paid a fortune for since 2017. And all he does is miss a ton of time during the season, but in the postseason, he's like Mr. October, Reggie Jackson. He shows up and he hits. You got Aaron Judge, the best modern day home run hitter. And you know what's amazing? All five of them are hitting great in the postseason. Garrett Cole's going to open for the Yankees against Flaherty. I think it's going to be a dynamite World Series. Richard Moore in South Carolina is scheduled to die on November 1st by lethal injection. He shot somebody at a convenience store and then took a shot at some other customers. He will die. Dr. Eddie Floyd finally resigned as a USC trustee. He is, yes, I was about to get to Fernando Venezuela. That was just an amazing thing, and I'll talk about it in a second. But Eddie Floyd, a USC trustee, he retired, and Henry McMaster named as a successor his daughter, who's also a doctor, which is great. But this nepotism, why can't we just get new, fresh faces on these the USC boards and the Clemson boards? Why is it always insiders that get there or that they name their successor? It's like, a congresswoman dies and then all of a sudden, well, we'll just appoint her husband, or the reverse. What makes it just by virtue of marriage or birth that qualifies you to be a trustee or a politician? The Steelers, look what happened. They named Russ as a starter. The first half of that game, he looked horrible, okay? And then he came back against the Jets and looked great. He throws a pretty long ball. It's high. It floats in your hands. One of the criticisms against Justin Fields is that his ball's too low. Therefore, you can't make that finesse catch or the finesse throw where it's a 50-50 ball. I think Aaron Rodgers is not the Aaron Rodgers that he was. He got Devontae Adams, which he wanted in a trade, and the Jets looked horrible. They looked like they were just walking through the motions on Sunday Night Football. Aaron Rodgers now, I think they're 2-5 or 2-6. They have real problems. They have tons of talent, but I think Aaron Rodgers is not the player that he once was. South Carolina, I think, is absolutely Gamecock football, the best 3-loss team in the nation. I think they have one of the best defenses in the nation. Their ends, Kennard and the other guy, are two of the best ends at putting quarterback pressure and sacks. I think Lenoria Sellers is turning out to be a really good quarterback, and I think that I'm hopeful when they play Texas A&M that South Carolina will be able to get over the hump. But they took the wood to Oklahoma at Oklahoma. I thought that watching the Chiefs, all they do is win. Okay, it's not pretty. Patrick Mahomes has 6 touchdowns against 8 interceptions. It's not pretty, but when the game is on the line, go with Patrick Mahomes. The Lions beat the Vikings, so now the only undefeated team is the Chiefs. That was a great game. Jared Goff is having a great year. Lamar Jackson for the Ravens is having another MVP year. Could be his third MVP. Certainly Derrick Henry, the King, is averaging over 140 yards a game. He has been a big difference maker for the Ravens. Look for the Ravens to possibly get over the hump and win it this year. The Alabama-Tennessee game was as good as it gets. I think Alabama has lost its luster. There's not quite the same shine on the dome, and I think they're headed for problems. I think there's unrest in the nation about their coach, Kalen DeBoer. Tennessee, Josh Heupel is a great coach. They are a good team. The Texas-Georgia game, Kirby Smart, he's just an old school coach, okay? He says what he feels. You may not like him. He said that there was bulletin board material, that everybody was against him. All he does is win, okay? He doesn't win against Alabama. His record's 1-6, but he's a good coach. I would look for Georgia to possibly win the national championship. Benjamin Netanyahu's house was targeted by a drone, his vacation house, and was damaged. So I think that that's something that Hezbollah is going to have to pay for dearly. They have not paid Iran back for the 200 ballistic missiles that were sent. So that's something that's going to come down the line. Clemson University football team is playing as good as any team in the country since the first game when they only scored 3 points against Georgia. They are an offensive juggernaut. They have no one on their schedule. I don't think they're going to play anybody until Miami in the ACC championship game. It's not their fault. I think that LSU is a strong team without a one-loss team. But let's talk about Fernando Mania. In the early 80s, Fernando Valenzuela was a pitcher that just came out of nowhere and took the Dodger world and the baseball by storm. He would look up as he did his windup, and he had this most unusual windup. Looked like he was shaped like a garbage can. Such a great guy. Took over baseball. Reminded me similar later on. I don't know if you guys remember, and about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, there was a player for the New York Knicks named Jeremy Lin, and it was Lin Sanity. He was an Asian American who went to Harvard University and came in because I think Stephon Marbury was injured, and he took the world by storm, was scoring like 30 points a game, and they had Lin Sanity, and it just was the similar thing. So that is everything that I can talk about that is non-political related. But so now let me start talking about Trump and a little bit of Kamala. I'm going to talk about Trump because he's just saying things that are totally troubling and off the wall. Trump is spending millions of dollars on commercials saying that Kamala Harris is for gender reassignment of prisoners and illegal immigrants. Here's the funny thing. This was a Trump administration policy. Trump actually signed into law that certain medical health insurance would pay for these gender reassignments, not only for citizens, not only for potential illegals, but also for prisoners. So it's the pot calling the kettle black, trying to make it look like that Kamala came up with this policy. No question she's for it. I'm against it. I'm totally against transgenders in sports. I've talked about that. I think they should have their own league. But I'm not, to say that Kamala was the one who did this is really a disgrace. This week he called the January 6th a day of love. He said that they were not protesters, that they're not thugs, that they're protesters. Guys, look, I have eyes, you have eyes. We saw January 6th. We know exactly what happened. Those people who were showing up with bulletproof vests, spears, and different things, and bear spray and everything, that's not the protest. That wasn't protesting. Trump is now saying it was an inside government job, that the Biden administration organized it and orchestrated this, and that his followers were peaceful, that they're hostages, that he's talking about internment camps. Remember internment during World War II? We actually rounded up all the Japanese in our country from the East, from the Midwest, and we pushed them to Seattle, Washington, because we were fighting World War II after the Pearl Harbor, and we were fighting Japan, and we rounded people up. Guys, that was only 80 years ago. I mean, it was a disgrace. And now Trump is talking about using the military to round up American citizens and putting them in internment camps. He said to John Kelly, General Kelly, I really respected Hitler's generals. And Kelly said, are you talking about Bismarck? Are you talking about Kaiser? And Trump said, no, I'm talking about Hitler. When you use the word Hitler, there's nothing to admire about Hitler. There's no good qualities about Hitler. Hitler talked about erasing humans, erasing an entire race of people, Jews and gypsies and other people that were not Aryans. I mean, he didn't like Catholics. It's beyond the pale to say that this guy is somebody that should admire. And John Kelly said, and by the way, he was a Homeland Security chief for Trump, and he was also his longest serving chief of staff. He said, look, you cannot elect somebody that doesn't have the right fitness and character. It's actually more important than policies. He said that Trump has zero understanding of history, that every time he talks about history, he gets it wrong. He said that he doesn't know constitutional law. Look, here's the problem. We knew that there were velociraptors in the first Trump administration, but they didn't know how to turn the doorknobs. In the second administration, there won't be any adults in the room. There won't be any John Kellys. There won't be any Tillersons. There won't be any Cohens. There won't be any H.R. McMasters, General Mattis. There won't be any Mike Espy for the Department of Defense. He's going to only appoint people who are not qualified but are 100% loyal to him. Velociraptors who know how to turn the doorknob now. And they're dangerous. And so I really, he wants a military that existed like Germany had their military. He didn't even know that Rommel's was a general. He didn't know the heinous acts that Rommel's did. questioning the honor of John Kelly, calling him a lowlife and a scum. These are nonpartisan people, remember. They're not politicians. They took an oath to be military people. John Kelly fought in the war. John Kelly's son died in Afghanistan. John Kelly's uncle and grandfather were in the military. I mean, this is crazy. This week he called Kamala lazy, someone who has a low IQ. Low IQ? How do you become a lawyer with a low IQ? How do you become attorney general with a low IQ? How do you become a United States senator with a low IQ? It's just all this is inconceivable to me that we're talking about this at this time. My eyes don't lie. My ears don't lie. Here's the other thing. His campaign chairperson, Chris Lasavito, he had to delete tweets, and some are still up, that after the 2020 election, he blamed the insurrection. He blamed the turmoil on the election on Trump. He said that Trump caused what happened to the Capitol. But now all of a sudden, when it's brought to his attention, oh, I was only retweeting stuff, or, yeah, I meant it then, but I don't mean it now. Come on, man. Again, my eyes don't lie. My ears don't fail me. I know what's being said. Trump went to two of his attorneys generals, Jeff Sessions and Bill Barr, to try to get Clinton and Biden arrested. Again, he's telling you what he wants to do. Here's the other thing. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. His Bible that he sells, the inscripted Bible, the Donald J. Trump Bible, it's made in China. China. Oh, China's so bad. Every time he gets home, I'm going to tariff them. I'm going to kill him. He makes it in China. You can't get it off. Where do you get off selling Bibles, sneakers, watches when you're running for public office? Are you kidding me? Are you a carnival barker? Look, this is real life stuff here, guys. He lied for a week that said in the 60-minute interview that Kamala gave that they edited. Well, 60 Minutes finally came out this week and said it was not edited. Where does he get it? You just can't say things consistently that aren't true. There has to be repercussions for it. And then to say that, to give a political speech, we're in the final countdown, and spend 12 minutes talking about the size of Arnold Palmer's penis? In the locker room, all the other golfers would, bug-eyed when he walked out of the shower. How dare you talk about that? What relevance is that to the office of the presidency? We just can't minimize what is taking place in front of our eyes. So, all I'm going to say to you is use your vote your conscience, but also vote with the truth, okay? Don't lie. Don't make excuses. When somebody's saying things, believe what they say. Don't contort it. Don't say, well, they said it, didn't say it. When you show them that they said it, well, that's not what they mean. So I'm sorry I went on a hard rant. I'm very, very scared for our country on what is going to happen on November 6th, regardless of who wins again. So let's watch some football this weekend. Let's get excited about Halloween coming up. Let's get excited about the World Series. Here are some questions from Corey. If not for all things Murdaugh that led to Luna Shark and me being on Cup of Justice and then my Good Skill podcast and now this Anything But Bland weekly update and the Anything But Bland book that's coming out in 2 weeks, what would I be doing outside of practicing law? I do give my time to charities, but my time is spent with my wife. And, when the few times I get to spend with my kids, my daughter's in Alabama, she's a surgeon, I never get to see her, she's always busy. My son, he's 28 years old, and he doesn't want to hang around with his parents. So my fortress of solitude, my sanctuary, is my house and being with my wife. I absolutely adore her. I love being with her. We ride around in our neighborhood and outside. We're in a rural area by the lake in our golf cart with our dogs. We love spending time with our dogs. We love cooking and just sitting around watching TV. We're watching right now two good series, Shrinking on Apple TV, and we just finished the first 4 episodes of Disclaimer with Kate Blanchard. So that's what I'd be doing. Spending time with my wife. We're entering in the ski season, so we're looking forward to that. Darcy asked me, what are my thoughts on public access issues to the Delphi trial? I think we need cameras in the courtroom everywhere, not only in state courts, but in federal courts. I think it's a disgrace. I'm worried about when the P. Diddy trial comes up that we're not going to have the true stories be told. I don't like it that what's relayed to us is told third hand and second hand by people who may not hear all the testimony. So I am absolutely believing that we should have cameras in the courtroom. Royalty 0303, look, I talked about Diddy. I think he's going to go down. I think he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison, as he should, but a lot of other people should go down. The Menendez brothers, I actually think they've done enough time in prison, and if there was evidence of parental and sexual abuse, that it should mitigate and cause them to get parole. So thank you, Bonita, for checking in and listening to me. Sandy Finch, thank you. Sue Johnson, do I think what happened to Rudy will be a deterrent to attorneys if he loses? The answer is no. I think there's a lot of greedy attorneys out there, and they're going to do what they're always going to do. I always used to talk about in a trial, we need a coffee cup moment or a coffee room moment where lawyers would stop after Ronnie and I, we had a $5.5 million legal malpractice verdict. We were hoping that the next day in the coffee room, somebody would say, hey, did you hear about that verdict that was against the law firm at the time, Nexon Pruitt, in Columbia, South Carolina? That's a coffee room moment. But I don't think that Rudy Giuliani is going to act as a deterrent, because lawyers are going to always be lawyers and do what they do. And good lawyers will be good lawyers, and bad lawyers will be bad lawyers. Just like the same with doctors, same with every profession. Sonny Daz, thank you for checking in. I hope people get up to vote. I had to wait 2 days because every time I went by the county office, the lines were so long. So it's good. Casey Odell, you're so sweet. Renee is sweet. Yes, she's a wonderful person. So I'm sorry I went on so long. Everybody have a great weekend. Take care.